Airbus Albo makes another stop off, this time in China. As we speak, he's on his way to Beijing. Tomorrow's when he has the big meeting with the boss of China to pretend that he's going to talk about human rights, but remind them that Australia doesn't have a ban on slave labour being used to build the 20,000 solar panels that his government demands we have to put all over the country, because it's oh so important that we deal with climate change when we're 1% of the world's problem as opposed to China, which is more than, what, about 30% of the world's problem right now? Of course, all of the media are not allowed to ask questions. See, they're well trained, these puppies. They're behaving like Toto, just in a suit, standing up on two legs, but they won't ask a question about domestic issues, because if he does that, the Prime Minister won't answer, and apparently that's an okay standard. As if he just got off a ship from 3 months to get there. No, he's on his own private jet, and I'm pretty sure they've got the technology that he could remain looking at the internet the whole time, let alone his ability to be across everything, no matter where he is in the world. But the Prime Minister, again, is pretending that what you're going to see in the next couple of days is vitally important and it's only happening because of him, as opposed to it's only happening because he's not the type of government that China doesn't like. And what government doesn't China like? One that stands up to them.
It is in Australia's interest to have a positive and constructive and open and respectful dialogue with our major trading partner. And that's what I hope to achieve over coming days.
And just when you thought the travel was over, because the peak of it all is to go from the White House with Joe Biden, then, of course, to Beijing, and then he'll come back home and tell us he cares about cost of living, while not cutting petrol taxes, while not helping small businesses, all the things we've shown you on this program over how many times. Oh no, there's still two more trips to come. Phil Curry writing about the political consequence of Airbus Albo and how that as a term is starting to catch on. Just over a week later, Albanese will be back in the US, this time for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, which will be in San Francisco, where, by the way, expected to be there, the US and China. So we could have had meetings with the US and China all in the one trip. I don't know, we had to have a separate one in China, a separate one in Washington, and then the family photo in the US. He'll then go to the Pacific Islands Forum, and that APEC thing will end up being his 20th trip as Prime Minister. A point made today by Peter Dutton.
I feel a great frustration because the Prime Minister's been hanging out on red carpet and travelling the world and dealing with elites and the union bosses and the industry super bosses. We've been out talking to Australians in cafes, in suburbs and towns. There is a lot of pain out there that I don't think the Prime Minister understands, and he needs to get cracking to provide some support.
Now, while Australians, according to these polls, and that Redbridge one in particular, have not made the transition to say that they want to change the government and therefore Peter Dutton would become the Prime Minister, just three quick things to remember. He was right about the Jobs Summit being just a giant excuse to give the big unions what they want. He was right about The Voice because, of course, $450 million and Australians all ended up on the opposite side of where the Prime Minister was. And he's, of course, been right when it comes to things like the mass immigration, which is coming to Australia, where, again, as I mentioned last week, I don't care what you look like, what you believe in terms of a God, but certainly I believe that multiculturalism should be replaced with some sense that this is a better joint than anywhere else in the world and that the laws of this country supersede whatever faith you have. But I've got something more on that in a second. But you know, the whole tactic of the Canberra Press Gallery is to do the government's bidding, which is to get Dutton, to turn up the noise. This is what they did to Trump, this is what they did to Morrison, and this is now what they're going to try to do to Dutton. You see, because he is on the right side of some very big issues at the moment, the government and the gallery won't let the alternative Prime Minister start to fortify that relationship with the Australian people. And God forbid that if he voted for the Liberal or National Party at the next election, or at least preferenced them after voting for another minor party, Jacinta Price, of course, the lady on the right of your screen, would become the Indigenous Affairs Minister. One of the biggest reasons alone to change the government. Well, she's there and she's ready to go. But as you know, the mission is get Dutton, which is why so often the poison that falls from their lips is a D word that they're trying to turn into a swear word.
Peter Dutton.
Peter Dutton.
Peter Dutton.
Peter Dutton.
Which is why the Prime Minister, as we told you last week, in the middle of the cost of living priority of the government, which of course was rubbish, they just said it a lot in speeches, started up a new dirt unit that was going to dig up everything they possibly could to reinforce the idea there was something dangerous about Peter Dutton becoming Prime Minister. Now, of course, there's already been a dirt unit up and running in the eastern suburbs of Sydney for some time, and it's done all that it can to dig up on Peter Dutton, and it's been summarily unsuccessful. But the people who were more than happy to turn up the noise on Morrison, the ones who, like in America, would turn up the noise on Trump, are the ones that are getting ready to do so to Dutton. We're talking here about self-admitted liar, nasty Nikki Sava, Peter Harcher, who of course is more than happy to throw some hate around as well, and Laura Tingle, well, she'll do it on the taxpayers' dollar for you on Channel 2 each and every night at 7:30. But the message while the boss was away to his chief leadership rival, but of course she won't become the leader of the Labor Party while Albo's still around because they're on the same faction and Albo would be able to see her coming, is Tanya Plibersek. And Tanya Plibersek's job this weekend at the Labor Party conference in Western Australia was to get Dutton. Don't talk about the failures when it comes to cost of living. No, let's just pretend you have to vote Labor because, firstly, you went to university, which makes you smarter than all of those other idiots. And, of course, you have to re-elect the Labor government, no matter how bad it is, because of how evil Peter Dutton is. The Environment Minister, Tanya Plibersek, has launched a deeply personal attack on Peter Dutton. Remember, she had to apologise in the past, by the way, for some of the stuff that she's said about the Leader of the Opposition, saying that he's a man whose life mission is to block progress, stoke division and kick the underdog when they're down. Sorry, examples, please? Direct quotes. It's always the poisonous politics of no. You see, that's the other thing, right? That when you have a bad idea and the opposition doesn't support you on the bad idea, then it's all about the politics of no. Which, I don't know, I'd be doubling down on that name. Remember, of no, 60% of the country was with Peter Dutton on that one. A politics that says you can destroy and corrode, can only tear things down, never build things up. And this is the thread that runs through Peter Dutton's entire career in public. This man is the man who boycotted Kevin Rudd's apology to the stolen generations. He's apologised for it, but of course it's only Labor politicians who get a redo. These are the positions of a certain kind of politician, one who sees weakness in empathy, power in negativity, political advantage in division. Because you see, it's division when you don't agree with the government. That's why, of course, the division is fuelled by misinformation, so we need to censor the internet. I don't even understand how lefties are cheering that on, but alas, they are. A man who seeks to reach the highest position in Australian government by killing people's faith in government. What, by controlling the borders and having a clear sense of national security? A guy who understands borders, language and culture. Australians want our leaders to act constructively. Oh yeah, because this one's just really holding everyone together, isn't he?